Hello, hello, hello. What ho? Welcome back to another exciting adventure of the Plain Truth 2.0. I'm your host, Travel Mateus, also on Radio Free Anarchy. It is a deliciously golden day outside. It's just so crisp and bright and very chilly here in southern Colorado. May 19th? The 20th. 5:20. Oh my God. This is my 30-year would have been anniversary. This would have been this day. I was married this day 30 years ago. That was an existential awareness to just, I was not even thinking about that this entire month. 5:20. That is a story to... Yeah, that's a great story, man. All right. Welcome to the show. Let me just say hello in the chat for whomever shows up. Start a poll. Have I subbed, liked, commented, and shared the show? Have I subbed, liked, commented, and shared the show? Start the poll. Alright, so... Alright, I want to get back to now thinking about what I was doing before, which was looking at this information here, and I was thinking about... No, I've lost it. But I was still thinking about foreshortening. Right? What was I looking at? I feel like it wasn't necessarily that. But I did. I lost the bright idea that I had. But let me look and see. Because I think I'm going to be able to remember if I see these images again. So you can see the tires, right? You can see this car here in the distance. And then in the next frame, there's no car here. So now we have an unobstructed view into this space here, right? Sidewalk, 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 and then I would think that this is probably a change in degree, like, because the sidewalk looks like it's right here, so it could be going down in this direction and changing directions. But here's the width of the sidewalk, and then here is where the sidewalk ends visually. But it doesn't end physically. It goes on and on and on and on. But right here, where you've got this tree canopy, and this line right here, you know, is this still the sidewalk? Is this the tree? Is this the sidewalk? Is this the sidewalk? That's probably tree because it's green. But you see that we're looking here into this point, but we're looking at it from a much farther distance, and there's nothing for us to truly see with our naked eye, something that is directly in front of us. you know? Zoom in on infinity. This is infinity right here because it just keeps going and going and going, but you can't see into that. Right? Like this is, you're looking through water. This is what water does. Oh, look. Blurry, blurry, blurry. Oh, look. Crisp and clear. Right? This is what I was talking about yesterday with our vision. This is a everything in proximity here is a snapshot still photograph, so that's why it's all clear. But if you were standing here looking out with your naked eye, the only thing that would be in focus is the thing that you're actually looking at within your proximity. Because if you're looking here, you're not looking over here, and your eye has no your eye has no resolution with this. It's in the periphery. You can see things in the periphery, but those things are not clear until you look at them. But in this snapshot, the eye, which is the camera, gets a glimpse of everything in that proximity, boom, as if it were looking at everything at the same time, which it is because it's a mechanism that we can, otherwise, it's possible that you could say that the focal point of the camera is what should be in focus automatically. Like that's organic, but that's too organic, right? Because if you, right, so the thing is like if I'm looking at this branch of leaves, I'm not looking here. So that's what this looks like while I'm looking here. But in this photograph now, if I change my position of, if I change my target from this to this doesn't come into focus the way it would if it were in real life. Like there's a certain amount of this distance that would be in focus in my line of sight, and then it would begin to start to do this at a certain distance, right? But I'm looking at something in a narrower field of view, so that everything within that narrower field of view is in focus because it's in a small enough space for my eye to create that clarity. I hope that makes sense. You know, like zoom in on this point right here. Like you see this point where the sidewalk ends. Do you see how it's just this almost like an artistic depiction, right? Like Monet painted that. Because that's what it is. It's just washed out information. Like what is at this point right here beyond, like what is at that point? Where is this green in relationship to this, what I'm taking to be the last part of the sidewalk that we can see? Like what's the spatial relationship between that? It's gone. Three-dimensional space doesn't exist in this world. Okay, so I'm still not getting my idea back. But look at this, right? There's something beyond here. Right? Like look at this. This is even a different, I'm trying to think of this. Is this the same? Or I'm just zooming in. Let me see. Yeah, because see, these are the same trees. Okay. So these are different images of the same, see how this changes now and it comes into clarity. Look, watch. Conk. Now this is, right, because you have a gray line and you have this gray and then you have this gray. And that's right here, and right here in this image. But when I zoom in, the camera is able to resolve that image differently. And there it is again, gone. And there it is gone, but it's still there. You see all of those things, and now we've got this white line there. Like that white line there is now bigger. All right. trying to think of like if I was going to zoom in on this part, because I think that this little point of focus right here is the, you know, idea of like this. If I'm remembering other images of this walking path snakes around this way, and so there's something or someone right there, right? I can't tell what it is. But if I could look at it with my naked eye, right? So like here, if I looked at this with my naked eye, I could possibly resolve it. I don't know. But as we zoom in on the image as it is, it could just be somebody. But my point is like this walking path continues on down, 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 and then comes back. Like this is the walking path farther in, and then we lose it behind the tree canopy, and you can see the meniscus, right? The visual blending. That's the, in my opinion. I mean, it's always here wherever the contrast with something else gets blurred. The diffusion of Rayleigh's criterion, right? When you have two things come into proximity with each other at whatever perspective you're taking, there's a certain point at which they will lose their definition and become an indecipherable. And so when does that happen? When does that transition? Is right when the visual spaces between those two objects meet in the distance, and when you focus on that, your eye loses the resolution, and that's like the twilight zone. Call that the twilight zone, right? I'm just trying to remember what it was that I was thinking about. Now it's coming back to me a little bit. It had to do with the horizon, and it had to do with, here it goes. I got some of it. Do I have one of the images here? I think it was this image here. For the sake of art, or just for the sake of time, this is in my example right now, a mountain in the distance, okay? This building represents a mountain in the distance. If you can just, for the sake of, I just need to get this out. Pretend this entire landscape is gone, and you can see this mountain, okay? The farther and farther away you go, I can't go far away. All right, I'll do it this way. Like, you can see this mountain, right? The farther and farther and farther away you go, that mountain changes its angular size in your field of view, but it is still always right there in front of you, just going away, because you're going away. Now, you can go up a mountain, you can go down a mountain, but if you get far enough away and you can still see the top of this mountain, you're seeing that far directly in ahead of you. Well, why can't we see the entire mountain? That's why we have to build up to that discussion, because what I was wanting to try to point out is that there is that astronomical horizon which is above the aquatic horizon. I see the water and the water stops. And then there's a space between that which is indecipherable to people, and they call it the astronomical horizon, as far as I'm understanding the science. Because that's the twilight zone of infinity, of where all of the space of the distance of everything in front of you, if it was unobstructed, right? Because if you have mountains, there's obstruction. But then if you can get away from those mountains without obstruction, let's say, for instance, the Rocky Mountains, and you're going to go traveling east, or you're coming west, and you're driving west. Let's go that way, because you're looking straight into the horizon. The horizon, there's nothing but flat Nebraska, Kansas. And then you see something in the distance, and it's maybe a dark triangle, and it gets bigger, and then the ridge, the ridge line grows and grows, and you're like, okay, let's stop right here because we can see the Rockies. Click, take a picture of that. What does the horizon look like? And then take a wide angle lens, because if you take the wide angle lens, it's possible. Well, you if you see it with your naked eye, then that's one thing. So my point is that yeah. Okay, so as you drive into infinity, and you're just going straight ahead. So now the horizon's always in front of you. The horizon is always in front of you. Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to argue with you about dip angle and dip correction. You're driving along into the west, nothing but flat, horizon, sky, floor, horizon, pinpoint, no thing on the horizon unless it's a house or whatever, but you can tell it's not that far away. And then all of a sudden you see this dark growth on the horizon that you start to interpret as the Rockies. You're seeing the tops of those geographical extensions, right? The Earth is rising up high enough for you to see it at that distance. So then everything below it is what you can't see at that distance because it's not outside of that space. You have to bring things outside of that space, because if you put things into that space, it goes into infinity and you can't see it anymore. So then you have to bring it out. And that's how you get to things and go away from things. You move towards it and it disappears. You move away and there it is. So then it's just that viewing angle that you are now, orchestrating. So I want to try and, I was thinking about trying to create an idea of this mountain that we can, slide forward and back into the ether, right? That energy field that is there at the horizon. But we'd have to, I'm just trying to think of that, how to make, it was just so much more sensible in my head when I first was thinking about it. And then it took me so long to get this set up. I was trying to hold on to that thought forever, but I know it'll come back around. All right. What's going on? Is anything going on? Nope. All right, so a needle pulling thread. All right. Here is, okay, no. I found that, okay. I was looking at that. Right? So we have this beautiful demonstration. Like the canopy shadows here are less dense. And there's no telling whether or not they're the same density as you go along here, because the angular resolution, the way that you're looking at this and the way that it's being affected by the environment that you're looking through, the air, these spaces between the shadows gets constricted and diminished and extinguished at certain points, because as you go farther and farther down, the visual appearance of the shadow gets more dense because you're having more information compressed into that space. And then you can just see it. It all depends on what the density, like this is a shadow and that's a shadow, you know what I mean? But how big is that shadow? Like you can measure this shadow, let's say. There it starts right there. There's the axis perhaps of the, if we're going to do a radius around, like this is the axis, so it's from here to here is like 5 feet, and from here to here, so like let's say the canopy is 12 feet, right? So this 12-foot canopy space is now being compressed into this space right here, so that this equals 12 feet of physical space in the distance in that visual space. But as you back out, or as you back in, let's say, or as you back in, as you zoom in and you follow the perspective, the floor is rising up. Apparently. Because we're saying it in this way, like this is down and this is up. But in reality, this position here is physically below my feet still, although it apparently looks like it is rising up to the center. This is the center of my vision. If I'm looking at this photograph right now, I mean, it's almost like a construction of intention. Like they intentionally did this so that we would focus right here. This is the division of your floor and ceiling. You know, like, this is halfway through the picture. Alright, let me see if I can get to anything I wanted to say. Man, I had some... Okay, well, whatever. Let's get to thinking about what I was thinking about. Let's go back here. Okay. I remember now thinking about cropping this and talking about the foreshortening here. Okay. But I just kind of did that with that last explanation, but then I would have to go back. I don't have an... I mean, I guess I could go take a picture of it. Okay. Let's see. Did I change the level on this? You can see it. Alright, I'm just trying to think of things to say and things to maybe... I don't know. So, let's go back here. Floor, ceiling. Alright. Alright, so... Let's see, I've corrected this. Let me go back. Alright, is this where I want to be? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Alright. The viewer's line of sight remains parallel to the surface, which in this example is water. The reason water is the best surface over which to make these observations is there are no substantial consistent elevation changes. The surface of undisturbed water is flat at every distance. This side view represents a greater distance over which the viewer is making his observation. At what could he be looking? Well, lo and behold, it's a sailboat. The A diagram represents the target at a distance away over water. The B diagram represents the apparent looming up of the floor in that distance. B is where he's standing, and it apparently is getting narrower and narrower. So you see the B fits within this visual space, but as you go farther and farther away, the visual space can no longer contain the B, so you wouldn't see the bottom of the B in this line of sight. And that's what happens when you watch boats go into the distance. The bottom of the boat is below the angle in which you can resolve the image that's coming into, oh, there it is, but I can only see the top part. Why is that? Because this bottom part is what I was trying to engulfed. It's extinguished. It's extinguished. And the only way out of that extinguishment is above that point. And that's only determined by your position to that thing. If you get close enough to it and that angular size starts to respond to your forward motion in your ambulatory exercise of understanding the nature of the world in which you live, the world that we were raised in is not the world that we truly live in. The world that we truly live in teaches us things that we were never taught. And this discussion about light attenuation at the focal point or the vanishing point of your perspective, because your eyes are not my eyes are not your eyes. You are not as tall as I am not as tall as thou. So the reality is, as you drive away from the Rocky Mountains, and there they are. Well, honey, doggone it, vacation time's over. We gotta go home now. But you know what? I've got the old GoPro hooked up on the back of the wagon, and we'll film the whole thing. And so then they go home and they watch the Rockies just get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And they have the footage to show you or whatever, and it's that particular time of the day, perhaps because of I don't know. But you have, because they get far enough away, there's nothing else out on the horizon high enough at that point, because if it, so, I mean, you're just watching objects with physical height diminish in angular size into the vanishing point of your line of sight. And wherever that band is where that thing is going to go into and disappear from the bottom up. That's the way light behaves. This is the physics of light. I don't need to give you an equation to explain what I just said in English, unless of course you speak a different language. And if your language is zeros and ones, well then I'm going to have to learn that language because I can't speak that language. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? We have been given an education that programs us to say things that we've been trained to believe are true. And then when you go out into the world and you make these observations, and Mother Nature's book that she just blossomingly opens up before you like a lotus flower, what you see out there does not say what they tell you in there. And I can't say it any clearer than that. So, how do you, unless you go out and make these observations and you spend this time watching things disappear that you know are straight ahead in front of you? Everything is always straight ahead in front of you. How far away is that straight ahead in front of you? Well, that depends on the day. Because that position is determined by the light and the condition of the medium through which you are looking. You know what I mean? Imagine, if you will, I could find you images of the Chesapeake Bay early in the morning, and there's just this cloud bank, a fog bank on, so you can only see so far. No one has a problem understanding that's what's limiting my vision, right? No one has a problem. Everybody understands the reason why we can't see very far right now, little Johnny, is because you see that little white line out there that's really far away? That's a cloud bank, and we can't see through clouds. But you know what, little Johnny? In a little while, the sun will come up, and those clouds will disappear, and we'll see things that we couldn't see before. Would you like to wait around? I've got a telescope, and by the way, Johnny's my son, so don't make me a creeper in this situation. But that's what Mother Nature would show you. Mother Nature would show you that her presentation of what you see out in the distance, her presentation of that information is dependent on the condition of the medium through which you are looking. Because if you're paying attention and you have the right equipment, you will see things that don't remain as consistent as you would think if things were just uniform and just no variation with however you want to create a conversation about the density gradient. Like, if you want to geek out on that, like, blow your mind out. I'd rather talk about it per se. Anyway, who am I talking to? What am I doing right now? Boom chakalaka laka, boom chakalaka laka. I was talking about the horizon, talking about the okay, I have an idea, and I think I have these things already in this area, so give me a second, and let me see if I can find, I think it's right here. Okay, yeah. Alright, so I'm going to talk through this right now, whether or not this is going to be whatever it is, okay? This is me working some shit out in my head, okay? Right. I'm on the beach at some distance from this point in Milwaukee. I don't have the topography memorized or whatever, but this is a cape which has a limit to its position because, there's no more land out here. This is the limit of the land at this point. You understand what I'm saying? This is high enough in my vision that I can see it. If I were to be in a boat and have this perspective and I were to motor away, this would get smaller and smaller and smaller into this point here. But everything... Okay, so look. The limit to the visible water that you have right here, you're looking over water. You see how clear these waves are? You can see the ripple here, this ripple, but they get washed out. This is foreshortening, right? Because you're having more and more and more and more distance crammed into the visual space that is now stopped right here. You can no longer see any more water. Why is that? It's because the energy of the air at that point is so intense that it is cutting off what's behind it, even though what's behind it continues along the same horizontal plane as the viewer, right? Again, I'm above water, remember here? Okay? This viewer is viewing something above water. Doesn't matter how far away he's looking, his vision is always going to be parallel above the floor. But as it goes into the distance, this is the position of B here. And now imagine I'm sliding B along here. And because of the angle of the lines I have here, B is going to become too big for the space in which he's looking. Okay? And so, as you can see, when the B gets here, we have lost the bottom part of the B. But the top part we can still see as long as it stays in that position, because if it goes farther away, it's going to get smaller and smaller into, but it's just simply going into the distance. That's all it ever is. It's just going, it's going into infinity. Because if you go out to any point along that line, it's just going to keep going and straight ahead of you. And again, is the world the way that you think it looks? Because when you look out to the horizon, you don't see in a two-dimensional way your vision above the floor the entire time, and things don't change with their distance to you. You can't not see the world this way. So the floor is rising up. The floor is being loomed up, and the only way it can do that, the only thing that can suck the water up or suck the floor up, is the active etheric existence of the medium through which you were looking, which medium I have affectionately called the ether band. It's just okay. So I guess what I'm trying to find is, so here we go, right? So this is taken from a position on the beach in Milwaukee. Now this is the same position, right? Is it? You see how the water's different? I'm closer to the water here. I'm higher up here. But there's no limitation to the water, right? So like here, the water at this elevation, I've gone up above that, like I'm going down into the density, and I'm going up now out of it, looking at a different. So now the density that I'm looking through here at this elevation, at this angle, here's the limitation of what I can see. In this one, the limitation of what I can see becomes right here. This is, again, this is the ceiling. Boom. This is the floor. The ceiling here, because this is higher than my focal point, this is the center point of my vision. This is where my focal point is. This is above, but it looks different than this. Why is that? Because it's closer, right? And then as it gets as the land goes farther and farther away, if we see land here, do you know what we understand? Like if there's water, 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 now there's land. That's the shoreline that you can't see. How far away is that? As I said before, I don't have this topography memorized, but I think that that's a pretty smurfing long way. You know? But you can also see, or I can, that there is an inferior mirage there. Okay? So this is not truly the limit, the focal point of our vision. The focal point is just here above that. But that's just quibbling over, because you see how minute that space is visually, so it's relatively the same area. That's still the same focal point, but as you zoom into it, you're now giving a little bit more of an angle, so you're being able to see, oh, there's another layer. Okay, so now this layer right here between, let's say maybe it'll be better if I go over here, right? So here's this treetop right here. Treetops, treetops, treetops. This treetops here comes down. This is the fold line or the vanishing line of the mirage. This is the physical representation of the tree line, and then the physical stops right here, because at that point, that's where the limitation of your visual space, that's what it looks like. Well, you wouldn't even know, like, this is, I mean, this is even, like, you can't even see that, what I was just talking about. Okay, so as I'm elevated here, I am elevated. So I went up, I think, about 200 feet. So from here, I'm at sea level, or I'm sorry, I'm at Lake Michigan level. Here, I'm about 200 feet up. It was an amazing, amazing view with just mouth-watering gems of, so look here. So here is land. Guess what this is? This is the shoreline. Shoreline. You see how now it's becoming, smaller? Like here's rocks closest to us, and then it just kind of, is this a shadow? Look how the beach just gets quieter. It's getting quieter in your visual space, but you see these waves right here? So like maybe this part right here is the last part of elevated Earth that you can see at that angle. And then right there is where distance, like, you see, I have a term called aquaband, and there are numerous levels of tones, right? Look at all this beautiful, just Lake Michigan, blue, green, and then here it just gets washed out and you don't see these lines. You see what I'm saying? Like, see how big this visual space is, and this is, and this is, and then it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it just washes together. And then there, now this is gray, right? Now that's gray. Okay? So now we've zoomed in a little bit. So again, you come to, like, these are the waves, like this is where the shoreline is. This is the shoreline. Okay, so how far away is this shoreline from this shoreline? This is the visual space representation of a direct line of sight with nothing but horizontal space. Parallel horizontal space. If the Earth is curving away from my vision, it is not parallel, but it always goes into the center. Everything goes up. Curvature goes down. Everything goes up. Curvature goes down. Everything goes up. There is no curvature. So now the distance between this beach and this beach is now compressed into this distance until you get over here with probably even more distance, and it's just in that fine point that you can't resolve because it's just going farther and farther and farther away from you. Right? So if we could get on the water here and drive away, or like, let's say we were this close, right? And it wouldn't look this blurry, it would look different. But we're this close and we start driving away, and we drive away, and we drive away, and we drive away, and we drive away. What will this eventually look like? Are you ready? Because this is elevated, right? Remember, this is elevated. So here we are, we're close enough to this target, we can see it. We're close enough to the target, but we start motoring farther and farther away. Remember, our boat is on the water, so we're on the water. What will this look like if we get far enough away? I gotta go all the way out. It'll look like this. Because everything in the distance is right here up. This is the astronomical horizon. The astronomical horizon means, this is what the astronomical horizon means. The astronomical horizon means that your true vanishing point horizon is farther away that you can't see because of the condition of the medium. If we were on this water, on a boat, and we started to go in that direction, you can see the ear of the bear here. I'll just call this, or maybe whatever, maybe it's a horse. Maybe this is the horse's nostril on his mouth, right? And this is the horse ear. Look, it's right here, right? So this is the same land, the same distance. This is the same distance as this. It's just that this is a higher elevation looking at this. But it's the same distance because I'm in the same geographical area, give or take a few hundred yards if you want to quibble about it. My point is that when you are close enough to this target, you can see the shoreline. Here's the shoreline. When you get far enough away from this target, like this, the shoreline is now behind a mirage. There is a mirage out here. The reason why you can't see the shoreline, the reason why you can't see farther at this point in this particular condition is there is a mirage, which is an atmospheric refraction phenomenon that obstructs everything that lies behind it and beyond it. So, again, At this distance from this height, there's an inferior mirage way, way, way far away. But if you go down to the ground, you bring that condition of the medium closer to you. And you can even see that the floor looks apparently like it's very close to us. This is not curvature. This is not curvature. You have a mirage right here on the horizon, because this is the way the horizon looks when there's a mirage out there. If this island weren't here, or let's go farther away from this. If we went farther away from this peninsula would get smaller and smaller and smaller and then disappear into the refraction phenomenon that's there, which is a mirage. Just right above. It's very acute. There is not but, let's say, 1/10 of this visual space refracted right here. It's very small. It's very acute. But if we were far enough away, we wouldn't see this bear, and we wouldn't see it because there is this refraction phenomenon on the horizon. There is a mirage here. Right here, there's still a mirage. There's just nothing for you to distinguish in reflection because it seems to have the same color of the sky. But right here is where the astronomical horizon is, boop, right there. In this space where the arrow is bouncing back and forth, in this space is the twilight zone, and there is a mirage there, and that's why you can only see this far. That's as far as the mirage is allowing you to see. And the very first thing that you're going to see when you come into proximity with this piece of land is this little ear right here. So if you're paying attention and you're watching, like on the horizon, there's not, well, you could probably see, because, I mean, you're going to have to be close to, I guess, Milwaukee on your right, but whatever, okay? There's going to be a point at which even the landscape with Milwaukee, the floor of the ceiling and the extension of the plane in front of it is going to come to a point in your distance where you can't resolve that pinpoint of those two angles coming together, which is the horizon of your visual space between the ceiling and the floor. Okay? The reason why you're seeing this far away is because there is a tree high enough for you to see. But if you were to go far enough away, that tree would just get smaller and smaller and then disappear into this condition of the medium, which would turn it into a mirage and then just extinguish it at that point, because soon you're going to go too far away, because the size of the angular size of these trees are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then they will be at this point here, on the horizon where you can't distinguish what things are. So here we have a zoomed in image of Lake Michigan. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 boats that I can distinguish, right? But do you understand that you are looking over the surface of distance that is parallel to your sight? Where does, your sight is probably going to be, well, I don't know, this is focused differently, so. The vanishing point, though, is up here, right? Do you see how this is just washed out until about right here? Okay? This is the horizon this far away. But how far away are these boats from you? Okay, so this is what I could probably see with my naked eye. Okay? And you see that the water is just going away, going away, going away. You've got something here that's disturbing the color, and then there's a line here. But then as you get back here, you've got these alternating currents of, this is light blue, light blue, dark blue, washed out, and now we've got washed out, and now it's washed out. Like, where does the distance stop, right? It just gets washed out here in the twilight zone. Like, the distance is still out here, and this is miles and miles and miles of just distance. And the reason why you can't see forever is because things get smaller as you go away from them, and there becomes a point at which they are extinguished from your ability to resolve that image. And it is always changing, because the farther away you are, or the closer you are, and the farther away you get, it's a kaleidoscope, because the lenses are always, it's like that division of the umbra. You know, you've got the dark shadows, and then you've got the like if this were a probably just go back to the right here. So you've got the dark part of the shadow here, and then right here you have shadows, but they're less dense, and so those are, you know, but that even happens at the edges, right? That had the edges is where the light and the dark start to create a dance. That's the umbra. That's the shadow. Right. Or like right here, right? So check that out. Like you see right here? Like that's the umbra. You see that's this little, see like that, right? You see that aura? Right? But if you go far enough away from me, you don't, this becomes sharper and sharper and sharper. But this is what looking at the horizon is like. Like if this is the horizon and this is a mountain range in the far, far, far distance, you know, this is what light does. Like at this point, you're looking at something that's directly in front of you. There's nothing blocking your view, but you can't see any farther. That's just the same way out there. You can't see any farther, but it still goes away from you. All right, whatever. So what am I doing here? I'm talking about, and then look, this is even zoomed out farther. Like I would have to look and see what the difference would be from this. Like this might be my naked eye, and this might be the resting position of the camera. I don't know. But you can just, regardless, I can only really see this boat at this focal length, right? So if I then zoom in, if I zoom in, see right there, oh, there's a boat there and a boat there. Oh, wow, there's 3 more boats. So now I can see those 3 boats. One's right there, one's right there, and one's right there. But I can't see them here, right? You see how this boat is right behind this boat? You see how this boat is right in front of this boat? You see how this boat is right behind this boat? And now it's smaller, and the space between it is smaller, and then now it looks like one just blob. Like this is the only part of it I see, because this is big enough in that visual space. But just like right here, I can see it at this distance. I can see it at this distance. I can see the horizon at this distance. But if I go away, I start to think that this is the horizon, because I can't see this part up here unless I have aid. Like, where would you put the horizon right now? I think most people would put the horizon where they see the last vestiges of like dark blue. That's where the horizon ends. And yet, we don't have the ability to change the polarity of the light like this. Do you see where my cursor is? That's the same position. That's where I would have put the horizon if I were looking at this with an untrained eye. But now changing the polarity, boom, now we have an extension of the distance, only we can see it now because of the polarity. But now the same thing has happened where the polarity didn't let us see that far here. Now the polarity is not letting us see that far here, because it's so far away and so small that even if there were a boat out there on the horizon, you wouldn't be able to see it. And I have some amazing footage that I'll probably just go into right now, but just look at this, right? See how much farther away the horizon is at this point? You see how the light is just washing everything out? Like it just becomes like indistinguishable. But doesn't this line here look like one of these lines here, but it's bigger and it's fast? So why isn't that just more water? Why isn't that just more water? And then lo and behold, you change the polarity and that's what it is. It's just more and more and more water, and the water just keeps going and it disappears from your vision. Out here is just infinity. So that, you know, like that's what this boat looks like. So you see how you can see this? I can tell what this boat's shape is basically. I can't tell what boat, this is just squashed. This is like just, what is that? It's just a blip. It could be like there's a seagull, right? I don't know. Could that be a seagull? I don't know. It could, let's just say it's a boat, but it's just a little blip. Little blip. This is what these things look like through the medium on this day. And if you got down lower, like this is the same day as far as I know. I think that's the same boat. There's a mirage when you get down to the water level. This is what I did. Okay? I got up high enough to see beyond this boat, which has had this point. Right? This is far, like you can see the tree line. This is not that far away. So then I go down to the shoreline and I can see the boat. I can't see any of the other boats. They're all right here. They're all right here in the distance, compressed into this point. Because if this boat were here, you would think that the limitation of the visible water that you're looking at is what? Why can't you see any farther? What is your answer? There's no land. You can't see any land there. So then, right, because you know that land can contain water. If you see land higher, if I see a mountain, if this were a mountain in the distance, I would know that the shoreline is directly in front of me. It's just common sense. It's just right there. And as I get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, I'm just bringing the lateral, parallel, horizontal horizon closer to me, even though it stays out there. But whatever was out there at a farther distance where I couldn't see it, as soon as it started getting closer to me, I could see it because it's coming out of that place. You know, and I have so many beautiful demonstrations of this where, and so do so many other channels. I mean, especially Wide Awake. Shout out to David at Wide Awake. He has some amazing footage with boats in the band. So that's what I'm going to just look at real quick because, you know, whatever. It is what it is. It was what it was. What am I doing? Boats in the band. Let's see if I can do boats in the band. Where is my boats in the band gonna be? Boats in the band. What is this new folder? Alright, did I look in here already? Yeah, I just did. Stinky Pinky. Okay, give it a thought. Boats in the band. Future content. Birds in the band. Contrast. Barge. You know what? I do have the barge. I do have the barge coming out of a mirage. I just don't know where it is. Here's a flashback for you.
Alright, so I have taken my stills. I am not in the water. I just didn't feel like taking my shoes off and doing that, so I'm probably 10 feet off of my normal spot, and that's not 10 feet elevation, that's 10 feet away from. We got a nice little aqua band starting right there. We got a nice.
Okay, so this is going to be a very, very important, crucial. I'm going to try to turn this music down because I don't want to be distracted by it, so hold on for a second. Okay, this is what we're talking about right now. We can see this buoy here, and there's another buoy here, and then there's an inversion of the buoy here. Okay, this is the focal point of the division here, because this is above and then this is below. This is the focal point. Okay, if I could zoom in here, it would just wash out. You can't see forever, but watch here. So we see this line. So look at the clarity. The water is clear. The water is clear. But as foreshortening happens, as the floor rises up and goes into the distance, that compression of space gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which is what happens right here. And then we have, and we can see the bottom of the buoy here, so I'm going to say that the buoy is in front of the event. But right here is where the event starts, and you have this, because you don't see any more water like this, right? So here's water, we can see the ripples, and then it's gone. Why is it washed out right here? Because this is a mirage. And then we have a disturbance at the focal point, the folding line, which I have many evidences of this. So you see this line right here? This is because the water is being disturbed and the ripples are coming high enough so that you can see that distance. Because you see how it's going from high to a fine point. It's washed out here, it's washed out here, it's washed out here, and then it's just wisping away. Why isn't it right here? Because it should continue in a linear fashion, right? But because the condition of the medium at this point is different enough to extinguish this. Perhaps, for example, perhaps, let's take it for granted that this is the wake of a boat. So all you can see here is like, this looks like whitewash, right? It looks like the wash after a boat has gone by, and you know that this was farther away. So if this goes farther into the mirage, you're not going to see it anymore. But what's out here then? This is the land, and now this is the ceiling of your vision. You're coming down to a point. This is the ceiling of your vision. This is the focal point where everything disappears and washes out. This is infinity. And then here's where the floor starts. So you have that point, this parallel point of horizontal lines meeting in the distance, right? But what I'm trying to get you to see is that right here we have an example of, you can't see everything unless it is closer to you, right? So this is coming closer to you. That's why you can see more, see more, see more, see more. Or it's big enough in that visual space at that distance.
Little aqua band starting right there.
But like, watch all of these birds in the distance. Like, okay, look, you ready? I'm on the shoreline. So this is a direct line of sight to this buoy. And now look at the angle change. Prong, right? But this is just farther distance to this buoy. But this, how far away is this from this? There is a way to find out. I'm sure the NOAA folk will be able to answer that question. In case anyone ever watches this or hears this, I have attempted to find the data in this particular area because I wanted to try to understand the importance that I was reading about, but not necessarily experiencing on the field. I always heard about how important it was if the air temperature was this and the water temperature was this. So all I ever had was the thermometers that I bought that I would throw out in the water, that I would set out in the area where I was, and I had 3 different ones going on with barometric pressure and humidity and RH, and is that it, right? And every time I went to look for the data about these buoys and how far, like the website was never up. It was always under construction. I'm just like, so there's, anyway, my point is that there's a distance here that is represented by the way the air is elevating. It's elevating the floor. It's looming the floor up to this point to come to a, I would say, severe mirage event. And the mirage is where the light limits your ability to see farther than that point. And everything that you're looking at now afterwards in a 2-dimensional representation looks like it's just up and down. But don't forget that there's distance between this is not up and down, this is farther away. This is not down from this. In visual space it is, but in reality you don't know perhaps that this is taller than this, just perhaps. Regardless, the farther away you go from this is the first thing that's going to okay, let me ask you this. If this were the whitewash of your boat, that means you're going away from these 2 points. If you get far enough away where you can still, like, hey honey, I can still see the green buoy marker and just the orange one is just right there, which one is not going to be visible to you first, and why? Watch for the beautiful beatific vision of the kaleidoscopic dance of Lady Aetherband. Mother Nature is dancing all the time, and sometimes you can't even see it because it's so far away. And I pity people who have not seen the majestic beauty of our aquatic world. So just watch for things in existence and out of existence. By the way, I have images of the shoreline that you can't see. Okay? Just because you can't see it right now. See that tree? You see this tree right here? Where does this tree stop? Does it stop right here? Because it looks like it goes all the way down. That's the reflection of the mirage. So the tree is on physical good old terra firma. And then right here is where the ability to resolve the ceiling from the floor becomes that vanishing point called, right here, the twilight zone. Like, what is this? I don't know. I'd have to get closer to it. And then when I did, it would look like this at some point. You get it? And then what would this look like a little bit closer? Oh, it would just look like a boat. Oh, well, this kind of like I don't know what this looks like. Like, if you didn't know that that was a mirage, I don't know what you would say there. Like, if I just showed you this, what do you think this is? I don't know. Like, if I said this to you right now, what do you think that is? There's little chance you would say it was a boat. My point is that this is what perspective looks like. The floor changed directions because of this event. This is what science doesn't say. This is what all of the opposition has said. How can the air do two things at that point at your viewing angle, at that point here? You want to make this boat look better? Get higher up. As you get higher up, you're bringing the boat out of that band. And if you get lower down, then you're putting the boat back in. You see what I'm doing? I'm just reaching out to something that's directly in front of me, and I'm bringing it closer to me, or I'm pushing it away. And sometimes I can push it so far away. And then sometimes when Mother Nature constricts her kegels, right? She practices her kegels all the time. It's called the horizon. It's and you've got mirage, and then you've got extended distance, and then you've got sinking, but it's the raising up, it's the looming up of the floor. Ugh. I mean, this is like, once you crack your brain on this, there is nothing that anyone can say. Okay, so yes, this is the way the floor looks in these conditions, and then when it gets to this point, you see how it starts to get washed out? It's washed out, and now this is blurry. This is what we're talking about. This is Rayleigh's criteria. This is where the target diffuses into, like, you know, why isn't, it doesn't look like it's that far away. Why isn't this more crisp? Because you're looking through water. Okay, so a needle pulling thread. You have the floor with less distortion. I would start to say right here, distorting, blurring. Here is where the mirage starts. So that plane now changes. That's now a different, it's like, that's Snell's law right there. How about that? How about you take this as that point of refraction? That's blowing my mind right now, so let me just slow down and have a think about that. Right? Yeah, because your viewing angle is the angle of incidence. That's where it goes. Yeah. Wow. I'll let somebody just find that one on their own. Like, you got to be listening to this to pick up on that. That's not a freebie anymore. Whoo-wee. That is deep. Wow. Huh. And that angle of incidence is the surface. I would have to, again, maybe I'm taking it for granted that Andrew Thomas Young understood that mirages were in the air, but I'm not so sure he understands that. I think that for some reason, maybe I hope he doesn't think that it's the water surface, but if he does, that's why this science is in need of remedy, is because the paper that Andrew Thomas Young criticized, did Monge accurately describe mirage? The things that I was reading that Monge was claiming are things that I think are the true reality, and Andrew Thomas Young is saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. Those things can't happen. We have the math to prove it. And that was just the whole sentiment of the article, in my opinion. Read it for yourself. The reason why this boat looks this way is because of the condition of the medium at this viewing angle, the medium through which you were looking. If you get the distance from this boat, let's say you get far, how am I going to say this? The farther away you get from this marker, this boat will look like this boat, and then this marker will look like this boat being inverted. Like this is the way it looks in the distance. This is what the distance looks like in the conditions. But listen to me very carefully. Because you know what perspective is and means, is that this is farther distance, because that's the way our world works. It comes to, like, where is the focal point of your vanishing line here? It's not right here. That's the horizon. And the horizon is typically just below that, which is called the astronomical horizon. But, okay, you got to be catching up with me, right? This is your focal point. This is the ceiling. This is the floor. This is all perspective. Everything in front of you is parallel to your line of sight, and it just goes into the distance. If there's a mountain in front of you, you can't go over the mountain with your vision. That's the limitation of your mountain. But you can, or that's the limitation of your vision. But you can see the mountain, and as the mountain goes farther and farther and farther away from you, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it just disappears into this place, which is really this place. Oh, I can't zoom in here, because this is a higher vantage point. This is the horizon, but this is the focal point of your vision. But the same loss of information that happens here is happening here, but for a different reason, because there's a different condition. You don't have a mirage up here. You have a mirage down here. You don't have a mirage up here. You have a mirage down here. So why can't you see, like, you see how blurry this is, and you see how blurry this is? You know what I mean? Like, is this a white bush out there somewhere or whatever? Because, like, this is a tree line. We know that. But you see how washed out that target is? Why is it washed out like that? Because of the condition of the medium. You're looking higher up through a now different density. The lower you get, the density changes. And that at this point, this is where the density, this is as far as the density, temperature, pressure, humidity, all of those things, this is as far as Lady Ether Band is allowing you to see. And the band in which you are looking, I don't know what the arc minutes would be, but it's just right here to right here. This is the visual space that the phenomenon is taking place in, because this is where the land gets higher than the event. When the land disappears into the event, everything physical below that point is still there, even though you can't see it anymore. You can't see the water anymore. There's no more water to see unless, like this, it gets higher, which is what I think that this is. Or it could just be that there's a temperature in, there's a convection of air that's wiping away. Like, it looks like that at times. Okay, but you can see perhaps the extinction here, right? This is bigger, this is smaller, and it's getting washed out. That's what that looks like right here. Let's say there's a wave right here. Why can't you see it? It's too far away, it's too small, and there is a mirage there, which is covering distance, right? So we have a pretty good demonstration of this right now. Are you comfortable in understanding that this is where I'm going to say the event starts? Because we seem to have something of an event here lower than this. So this is like a wildly perfectly timed or placed right from this point to this point. Do you think that's a horizontal reference frame? And then from this point to this point, do you think that's a horizontal reference frame? In other words, when you are going over, and this is relatively not rough water, you're going over a horizontal plane. So if that's the case, and this is just distance straight out ahead of me, I know that the limit to the water is right here. Why? Because this is land. And I know what a mirage does to the distance. So everything right here to right here is physical distance. I don't know how far away. Like, okay, there we go. That would be interesting. Here's the answer. If you could look up the Chesapeake Bay Concord Point and find these buoy markers, you would know how far this one, the orientation, you'd have to get in contact with me. Because I have no interest in trying to figure out if they've got their stuff up or not. But let's take it for granted that this is like, say, 500 meters. because I have a buoy off of the Concord point that's 500 meters away. So I'm just going to argue for the sake of argument that this buoy right here, is 500 meters away. So now this viewing angle represents that distance. That's how much distance and angular size can fit into that phenomenon. Okay? Okay, so... Oh. So this boat... Oops. Okay, so this boat, okay, you see this boat right here? We have water, 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 water. I think that this is a mirage of this. But this is water, 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 and this is the limitation of your ability to see any farther. But this is land, and that's the horizon. This is the shoreline right here. The shoreline is directly in front of you. This is about 5 miles away, okay? How far away is this boat? I don't know, but it's at that point. You see where the water is, and then the hull, there is no hull down. There are never, ever, ever, ever any boats below the horizon. This boat is above the horizon. Why? Because I can see the water and then I see the boat. That's the dividing point of my vision. And then if you go out right here, lo and behold, you can't see any more water and there's land. This is the horizon. That means this boat is 100% physically visible to us. It's just that this is what it looks like at this distance. Nothing is to angular size. The mast could be being towered by the refraction. You can't do blink tests with this. But if you'll notice right here that at this point and at this viewing angle, there is a temperature profile that's happening right here because this white here is being reflected right here. And then this blue here is being reflected right here. This is a mirage that this boat is going to sail through if I hold on to it. You can see it dancing right there. You see how this is all just this vaporous Fata Morgana? This is the, right here. You see this water right here? You're allowed to see this water because of the profile, but sometimes you don't even get this sometimes. And so there is a lower horizon. There's a lower division, and people think that's curvature. But it's not, because under the right conditions, you would see the water here. You might see the boat, and the boat just looks like it's on the air. That's because at that angle, that's the polarization of the light that's in there that washes it out, and it looks like the sky because the sky and the polarization, all that stuff. But that boat has enough angular size at that position and distance to offset what you're looking through. So if you didn't have... Okay, so here comes the barge. This barge is on the water right here. But you can't see more water back here under these conditions, because under other conditions, I can see farther water. Doesn't mean it's not there. Look, we are seeing this barge directly on the water, and yet right here is a mirage at this viewing angle, right? So let me ask you this question, Bill. Right, Bill, if you see this, I don't know how far are we into this. Maybe I'll tell you. I don't know what time this is. How long is it? Oh, I know how to look it up. Give me a second. An hour and 25 minutes. Okay, that's a good marker right there, Bill. Okay, so Bill, honestly, this is my question, man. we have your specular reflection and whatever else you want to call it, right? Why is there a break in the mirage right here? Right? I mean, like, look, we have the distant land, distant land, distant land. This is 12 miles away. The shoreline, I'm not talking to Bill right now. I'm talking to everybody out here. The shoreline is right here in front of you. Just like if you were on the water right there looking at that place and you just kept looking at that place and you got closer and closer and closer, you would just see what's there when it gets into your field of view. It's coming out of that constricted amount of information that you can't resolve right now. So now we have we've got the captain's barge or whatever, like, or the captain's deck, and we have the barge coming back. Like, this is the water line in my mind. That's the water line, right? And then if you go down below it, like right here, that's the mirage. Because, like, otherwise, what is this? Right? Otherwise, what is this space right here? What is this? Yeah, again, my position is that the whole barge could be compressed into this smushy place right here, but I think that there's a very acute mirage right here because, again, we have this part here. So that would be, if this is the bottom, or if this is farther water and then the water cuts off here. You understand what I mean? Like, so here's the boat, here's water. Water, water, water. Here's the mirage starting. So now this gray here is the reflection of this gray here, right? So this is a mirage right here. So this is all mirage. But my question is, Bill, why does the mirage stop right here? Why isn't this water reflecting this stuff too? That's my question. Yeah, I think that this is right, yeah. Because obviously, look, this is a mirage right here. So this is the limit. So there has to be a vanishing point, and it's right here. So this is water. So this is farther water. All right, so this is the entire, like, see how large the top of the ship is? Oh, travel, are you telling me that the rest, like, how much, like, you say how much is missing from this. I don't give a smurf. I understand what I'm looking at. You're telling me that that amount of physical space can't equal that amount of visual space. And that's your issue, not mine. Okay? You can even see the whitewash coming off the stern. All right, so here we go. There we go. So now so check this out. So this line that we're looking down right now, as I pan to the right, this line exists the entire way down to the buoy markers where we're going to end up. So we're looking across distance, right? So look, if you were to take a picture of this in a wide angle, it would just it would look like one linear line. But that's distance, right? Because you don't know where it's changing its position. And you could be looking down a line of distance, but because the event has an angle to it, that's the entire plane in front of you, so that's the angle of incidence, and that's where you're looking. So that's where your line, that's where your plane starts. That's where this plane starts. This is a plane that is dancing on the edge of visibility and invisibility, and the invisibility there is in the form of a mirage. What's invisible? Everything that lies beyond it and now behind it. Until you get high enough above this angle of incidence, which is what this is. This is distanter land, 12 miles away. This is what 12 miles away looks like. This is what the shoreline looks like 12 miles away. under these conditions. So now watch the line as we go across. Okay, so if you think about it, this shoreline isn't uniform, right? You know, like I don't know what its angle is to where we're going, but let's say for instance like that shoreline is going farther away from us, let's just say. So then as you're looking down this line of the horizon, which is just simply the dividing line between the water and the mirage, that's a horizon now. Right, so this boat, how far away is this boat? How far away is this boat? So are we looking farther away? Because now you see how the mirage has now changed in this, from this place to the next? Right, so like watch how this space changes. Let's see if I can slow it down. So now you see, see all the way up here now? Like that's what farther distance looks like. All right, let me do this. All right, so what I want you to now pay attention to is this point here, because this is the shoreline. This is where the water and the land come to a point. Why do you say that? There's land that's higher than the water. That means that the land is going to touch the water at some point, and the water is on a plane of existence directly in front of me that terminates. Like if I were in a boat right now and I went in this direction, I would hit land. The shoreline is directly in front of me. But watch how this point changes. I can see some white right here. This boat is the entire boat is right here. Can you not see that? Do you not see that? How far away is this boat from the land? That distance is now at this angle. Like it's like, who knows how far away this is from that land? Doesn't matter. It's that distance is right here in this space. Just like this reflection of the boat is in this space. That's what the conditions of the medium are creating for you to see at that point. So that this is where the boat is on the water, correct? So we have full visualization of the boat. That's what that means is, because there's a mirage here, this entire boat's angular size is now compressed into that visual space in an inverted hall of mirrors, because this is not a static surface. It's dynamic. The air is always moving. But at this angle, at this frequency, at this vibration, at this angle, at this frequency, at this vibration, that's what the light is forming to present to your eye, if you can see it. Okay, so now again, look, you see now the appearance. Now we have a light band here now. We're looking, in my opinion, this is my interpretation, this is farther away. And this is going farther away and farther away and farther away. But if you were to do a pan out, the mirage here and the mirage back at the, like I'm zooming in. The mirage here, if I pan out, the mirage is going to be across the entire field of view. It's going to be horizontal. Look at those birds dancing out there back in the background. Look at that. Oh, I moved it. So now those boats seem to be getting closer to us because they were bigger. Oh, like, oh, watch, yeah, look, you've got some interaction right there. Oh, there's the barge. Let's see if someone's hanging out. Hey, what's going on, Cleary? Yes, refraction can also occur at nighttime. Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Joe Mama. If you're still here, man, thanks. Appreciate you guys. Sorry I'm not looking at this. I'm just geeking out. But I think that I've said some pretty important stuff. If you guys want to, challenge me or ask me something like, but I think within the past 20 minutes, I'm going to have to make sure I clip those parts out for smaller soundbite segments. But you see how much, look at how much that horizon is dancing. Look how active that is. All right. Again, if this is on the surface of the water, and I don't believe that it is, why is the water not all a mirror? Why is it not all a mirror? Because at the angle at which you are looking is the angle of the air through which you are looking. That becomes the angle of incidence of refraction. That's Snell's law in the change of a medium. The medium is changing right here. And then after that, all bets are off in terms of angular size and distance. Because how far away is that boat from this mirage? How far away is the boat from the mirage? Could you tell that distance? Only by knowing, perhaps like if we use this marker, like I said right there, like I think it's starting right here. So if we knew the boat and the marker were 200 meters apart or whatever, then we would know that this angle of incidence is representative of 200 meters of space. But I mean, don't you just see how beautiful? Like, look how just beautiful, and look, this is just far away, and then it's just right here. There's an inversion here. Like, you can see the cabin right here. So we're going to see, okay, so here's this boat in a mirage. We're going to see, I think, right, so, oh, look here, look here. That's the, okay. That is probably right where the mirage starts, right there. Because here's the barge, we have this line, and then there's an inversion. Your clue, especially with obtuse angles, it's going to be a caret. It's going to be a sideways caret. So we're going to watch this barge get closer to us and come out of the obstruction. You can't see the bottom of the barge right now. Why? Because the light is not letting you. So what are we going to do? We're going to let the barge get closer to us, and you're going to see what is behind the refraction at the point where you can't tell where does that start and where does that end, and then all of a sudden, oh, there it is. That's what you're going to see here. Okay, so this boat, right? We know this is a boat. You know this is a boat, right? This boat's on the water. Why can't you see the water? This boat is next to this barge. They're on the same horizontal plane. And yet the angle changes because of the refraction that you're looking through, right? So you're looking through something right here, and then boom, at this angle, it becomes a surface upon which the conditions of the medium, which involve everything, I believe, are vibrating at such a position as to become a surface over which that's just as plausible as anything that anybody else is going to say. Absolutely. Because there's no way to prove it either way. It's just a description of what we're seeing. Okay, but you see how you cannot see, like right here, boom. Like that's not physically happening. The barge isn't physically this big. It doesn't have this bend to it and then a lower protrusion that comes out. This is where the barge is on the water. It's now going behind the man-made estuary. So here's another example of perspective here for you. This is 3 miles away. This barge is passing behind it. Do you know what we know? The shoreline's right here. This is the same argument as this. I'm telling you, if you don't understand what you're looking at, the shoreline that you cannot see is back here, just like this shoreline that you cannot see is right here. How do you know that, Travel? Because I know that water terminates when it hits the land, and this is land. So guess what that is right there? That's the angular position of the physical reality that you think should be there. Like you know what I'm saying? Like what do boats float on? They float on water. Is this a boat? Yeah, it's a boat. So there's water right here. Yeah, but I don't see it. So it's not there. Why? Because that's curvature. That's absurd. We're looking at a demonstration of perspective through the ether band, and what these targets look like at this position during this phenomenon, right? So if you have a horizontal frame of reference right here, which is the shoreline, okay, and then you simply now extend that to the boat, these are not in the same physical position. So this is farther away. And now we get to the physical part of the barge, and right here, lo and behold, like this is where it gets confusing. You know, it could be right here. Like this is physical, this is a reflection. Regardless, this is where the visible water is limited from our visibility, and the angle of incidence now changes because we're having the distance visually altered and completely, like we don't know the distance. We can't imagine like depth here because it looks like it's a vertical image. It's not. It's along the plane of your vision at that angle. And if you got lower, it would change. If you got higher, it would change. If you got lower, it would get bigger. You would see less. If you got higher, you would see the water and eventually see the bottom of the barge. But you're just higher up, and you've opened up your aperture. Watch the birds dance in the band there. Boink, boink. Oh, where'd he come from? Oh, where'd he go? But I just love this knowledge, you know? It, you know, like what would that boat look like on a different day if it was moored there or anchored there or stayed there for a few days? Like, what would it look like? Let me get these. Watch this. Boom. Where'd they go?
Where'd the birds go? Where'd the birds go?
Look at that. Okay, hold on. Hold. Stop it. Okay. Okay. Bill. We are an hour 46 in. Okay? It is your position, I believe, it is your position that it is the surface of the water. The surface of the water. Am I right so far? It's my opinion that the surface of the water, it's my opinion that your opinion is this. This is the surface of the water. And I know that water doesn't just stop when I stop seeing it visually. I know that you assume it goes out into. So then what is happening here? And you would probably say it's a reflection, it's a mirage, but that's happening at the surface of the water. The water is reflecting this, and it's called specular and diffused, right? You make that distinction. I'm not going to argue about those right now. I want you to answer me this question after we watch these birds land on the surface of the water. The birds are going to land on the surface of the water, and I can see them right now. There they are. They underwater right now? The phenomenon known as mirage is happening in the air. That's what you're looking through. I do believe that they are underwater, as am I. I am underwater right now. It's just that the water particulates and the water molecules are fine enough that I don't drown. They get big enough, it becomes water, and I can't breathe that, right? But this is the same concept. You are looking through densities upon densities of liquid lenses that are spheres, droplets of water or whatever. They're constantly moving, whatever. Okay, but do you understand? If those birds, if the mirage is on the surface, wouldn't the birds stay above the mirage and mess it all up? They don't. They go underneath. They just went underwater, bro. They just went underwater. But it's air, but it's thick enough to be like water at this distance, at this viewing angle. It's happening in the air, as is this. This is not happening on the surface of the water, but this is the same concept in terms of how these 2 points of intersection. The horizon, this is the horizon at this point. This is the highest point of land, and that's the sky. This is the horizon. Do you see how washed out that canopy is? That's what that looks like under at this angle. You're never going to see a mirage up here, ever. You're never going to see a mirage right here under these conditions unless you get lower because you're looking through air at that point. You're never...
Where'd the birds go? Where'd the birds go?
Let's go back. I want to see what I do with this transition. I think I go too.
Birds go?
I think I go too fast. Okay, so just real quick, right? So these birds are landing on the water. Okay. At this point, this viewing angle is a mirage. This part right here is not the. This is not physical water right here. This is not. This is a reflection. If this were physical water that this bird were landing on at this angular resolution, we would still see it. It goes below the point of resolution because it's going into the ether band at that fine of a point of visibility. So, if we go back and we see that the birds... Alright, so I'm gonna, like right here, like, you see how the birds are gonna land on the water right here? What's this back here? Wouldn't you say that's more water? So when they land, boink, this is the shoreline right here. This is what the shoreline looks like with this condition. It's accentuating the blue of the water and washing out the dark, brown sand of the sea, of the shore.
Where'd the birds go? Where'd the birds go?
Yeah. So I wish I would have panned out to see, because at this point it doesn't look like there's a mirage. So at some point over there, it would have disappeared, and that would have been cool to have been able to point out. I can do that in other videos, but I'm just talking about this one. Like, we're looking at, see this house right here? Okay. I have images of this house where you can see the windows. This part right here, you see this twilight zone of your focal point, right? This house is high enough above this point to where you can understand that if I said, if you knew, this is a house, you'd be like, okay, I get it. Then get this. This is the shoreline. 9 miles away. This is what 9 miles looks like as opposed to what we were looking at before, which is just 3 to 4 miles. This is double that. This is closer here. You can't even see the shoreline here. Can you see the shoreline here? This is closer than this. If you got farther away from this, it would look like this, but the shoreline's still right there, going away from you in the distance. It's always right there. You're always above the horizontal plane over which you were transporting yourself. If you're on this water, you're always going across an horizontal plane. Where I'm standing right now is horizontal to this shoreline, which is horizontal to this shoreline, which if you were coming back is horizontal to the base of this buoy, which is horizontal to the base of my feet. This is all just distance through. If I went farther and farther away from this, when do you think that this white would extinguish? When it gets close enough to this part and is too small for your eye to resolve. Okay, so look right here. We can see it right here. This is physical water. This blue right here is physical water. This is a slight mirage of this part right here at this angle. Okay, no, oh, no, I'm sorry. So we have the, let's go back here because we don't see anything but just like we have water here that we can see these rivets, but right here is where I'm going to say it changes. Like I lose this clarity. So like right here is a it's an angle of incidence, if you will, and you can see the air already affecting what's this line here, right? And now we're going to pan across. Now this dark line right here is going to turn into a reflective surface. You see how we're still having here? You see that line right there? This line right here is the physical water above this line, which is a reflection of something at this angle. And then you see, now the mirage is going to swallow. As you see how this is going now, this is almost like I think that this is a pretty good representation of what I'm going to say in just a minute. Okay, if I put myself at this viewing angle right here, this is going to be a side-on view of how I would see the distance. This is what the distance does in my eyesight. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it just disappears. This is what the distance looks like as you're this is what we're looking at, a side view of how you see in perspective. And this is what your vision does. It gets to this point of extinction, which is the horizon. That's always where the horizon is, because the horizon is created by the refractive, energetic, magnetic, electromagnetic energy, etheric. Okay? So, but pay attention to this too. Like, right, so over here now, okay, over here now, we have land. This is the ceiling. And then this is the definitive horizon that's obvious, right? So now we have the floor. Here's the floor. There's the ceiling. This is perspective. This is our vanishing point, right here where all of this activity is happening. But, okay, so I guess this is what I'm saying. This is what I was saying a moment ago. As we look from the right to the left, if I drew a line in here, it would be horizontal. But the line above it would well, I don't know if it's decreasing. This is the point that's decreasing in angular size. So as something goes away from you, if it has angular size, it diminishes. So like this is what going into the distance looks like. This is like the farthest away. Like if this were a road, and somebody were driving on this road, driving down, they would just go, but they're right there, still driving away, just getting farther and farther and farther and farther and farther away. But we have land here and we have water here. Guess what we know? The shoreline is right here, but I can't see it. Do you know why? It's behind something, but it's not curvature, ever. It's always the refractive quality of the atmosphere, of the ether band at that viewing angle. So now we have this physical position that we could put a boat on. If I had a boat, we saw this boat right here. There's a boat right here. Or let's say that this cursor is the boat. I can stop that person right there and say, stop, you're right at the horizon. And then we would know how far away this angular space looks like under these conditions, because it's never going to be the same. This could be, let's say this line right here, this could be 2 miles away, and this could be 4 miles away. There could be 4 miles of distance compressed into foreshortening in a version of a mirage, because the mirage is over distance like a like the shadow of a tree, right? If this were the shadow of a tree and it were in front of you, it would look like this. The tree's up above it, and the shadow looks like it's directly below it. It's not. The shadow comes out just like this. And it looks the way it looks depending on the angle of the sun and the size of the tree, all that kind of stuff. That's what the mirage, you have to understand, the mirage is not vertical. The mirage is not vertical. It is at the angle of incidence as you are looking through a medium that changes with distance and everything else that's in between, right? Because I don't know what's happening out there. All right, let's put the music back on and get back to watching this. Because we gotta watch the barge come out of the phenomenon. So right now, we have the red pavilion mirrored here. The entire pavilion, right? This pavilion, okay, please understand me. This pavilion is lower than this house. I can demonstrate that by saying that this is the floor level of the house, and this below it is the shoreline. We can see the shoreline. The reason why I'm saying that is because the shoreline is dirt, and this is the dirt of the shoreline. But we don't see any of the shoreline on the pavilion. Why? They're roughly the same distance, but the pavilion is smaller. It's closer to the twilight zone, which happens to be just right here to right here, right? So here is a seabird. Do you know how I can make that seabird disappear? By lowering, and then the nothing comes closer and swallows the bird up. Right? You know, like I wish I could think about some of these things while I'm there or whatever, but if I did that, that would be something that I would want to do right now. Even though other people have done it, like Skyfree, they've taken their motorized RC boats and they've driven it into this phenomenon, and we watch it go up and away. Every single time. So, if I could get a point of reference here to the termination of the visibility of the water, I would know my physical distance to the shoreline, and then I would be able to tell you with absolute certainty that the distance is, that this angle of incidence encompasses the foreshortening of 4 miles. But if I backed out here, you would see what, like if okay, so this is 5.87 miles away. This house is 5.87 miles away from me. So for the sake of argument, if we knew that this point was 4 miles away from the house, that would mean that this amount of water between is 1.87. So if I backed out and showed you how much water a mile, almost 2 miles is, and then you see how much of an angular space 4 miles is compressed into, stop saying refraction can't hide that much of the target. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to mark that because that was a good rant. This is just absurd. This is not ever curvature. This is the result of the conditions of the medium, and the light is changing in this position, and it's a limitation of your vision. This is a farther away target that's blurrier and washed out, but nevertheless, its position is due to the conditions of the medium, and its angular size is sometimes diminished and magnified. you know, like, let's just go back real quick. So as I pan back out, watch how small the seagull gets. Okay? You see how the seagull is now becoming more and more a part of that horizon. You see now, where's the seagull? Where's the seagull? It's right there in front of you. It didn't go behind the curve. Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is still. Okay, now I can still see it, but where was it before? I can see it now, but I couldn't see it before, right? And now it's just like washed away. And then I think I'm gonna pan. But that's what happens to objects when they get to that. When you lower your viewing angle, you are bringing the horizon closer to you, which is like asking the energy to get close and swallow up whatever's in that. Like when you lower your, if you could see the bird and then you lower your angle and you can't, you've just extended the blob, you know? But look here. Okay, so now we're looking in reverse. Now we're seeing where the, whatever's happening here, what's the difference between this area and now this area and now this area and now this? Like, what's happening right here? Why is it isolated, right? There's a linear division. You see it, right? There's a linear division. As I pan down here, what is the visual limitation of this? Why does this have limitation visually? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, this is a flag on the shoreline across the way. Right? This is the shoreline right here. How do you know that, Travel? There are trees here. There's land right here, and here's water. This is where the shoreline is. This boat is directly in front of you. Tell me about it. Describe it to me now that I've zoomed in so that you can see it. All right, so now we have this. This is the vanishing point. This is the vanishing line. This is where everything above becomes confused and constructed in a way to reflect only a certain portion, right? So here's this part right here, and then look, you know, so like this little divot right here is right here. But the, you know, like, why is there this space? Like, what happened right here? What is that colder air? Is that warmer air? Do you know, Andrew Thomas Young? Is this colder air or water air or warmer air? Colder or warmer? Colder or warmer? How about now?
This thing's so touchy. I can't. That's it.
Because I've got my lens extended as far so that it's hard to balance. I just get. See, there it breaks up and it just disappears. It's gone. Again, I'm going to say this because that's farther and farther away, where the shoreline is receding. Okay? So, the shoreline has physical contact with the shore. Right? The shoreline has physical contact with the shore. But if this is going farther and farther and farther away, right? This is going farther and farther away because the mirage is growing. Right? Now the mirage is up here. Now this is farther away. Right? You see how this goes down like that? That's because it's either smaller, or farther away. And it could just be that this is like, let's say that all of this is cliff face. So like this is a cliff and it goes down and there's the water. It could just be that this is just a, you know, a lower elevation, but that's still the same concept. Like this is lower to the ground. Like let's say that this is 30 feet high and now we're down here and now we're 20 feet high and now there's 15 feet, but we come back up, there's 12, and now we're going down and now this is 6 feet high, 30 feet high, and I'm in the water. Like this is the shoreline, right here in the middle, because this is right here. This is a mirage, and so the mirage limit is right here, which means that the distance here is compressed within this viewing angle. And if there were a boat here, depending on its size, you might not see it, or you might see a mirage of it. So now we're back here to the right? So I'm gonna pan out. Watch how small. See the area here? See this area? Keep an eye on this area when I pan out. I might be able to say that I see it here. But if this is not far enough panned out, if it got smaller, you see how this is happening? This is straight ahead in front of you. The shoreline is right here. Shoreline is right here. Right there. And then since this is lower over here, it's right here. And there's the seagull.
Alright, so that's full zoom optical.
Then I hope I don't forget about the barge. Right? So here is another explanation of the physical reality that we're looking at right here. If this boat were closer to us, we would see the entire boat without mirage. If that boat were to go away from us at this point, we would watch it go into the distance just like it does in perspective. And we would watch the reflection change and grow. When it gets out to this point here, the mirage is farther away, or the vanishing point is farther away. And so, what do you think this little white wisp is here, right? What is this? And then you're going along, right? Here's a boat, and the boat is above the water. Now there's no boat here, but this is the same area of space that the boat would have. This is the water here. This is where the boat is on the water right here. So we know that we're seeing the entire boat because the water is below the boat and we're seeing the boat above the water. So we know the boat is above the water. So we're seeing the water upon which the boat, but the water's right here and it kind of looks all washed out. Not only that, there's an inverted image. That means that this entire boat has to be physically here because we have the entire boat inverted. This is the point of your vision's inability to focus. And watch right here. This part here, in my mind, I don't know, it could just be a temperature thing, but there's extinction here. There's extinction here, but this is where the shoreline is beyond this boat. And this bird just came in and out of the band right there, and that one did too.
Where did that bird come from?
Yeah, I know. That's what I just said. So now, when this guy comes out of this part here, when this point of reference disappears and he's just floating here, see how he's leaving it behind? Look at that. So now, what do you like? What is that? If I showed you this. Like, it looks like a dragon to me right now. Like, there's a dragon eye, there's the dragon's mouth, there's the dragon's nose. It's a dragon, okay? This is a pareidolia, right? A pareidolia. This is an image out in the distance that at the distortion under which it's going, it looks like something that it's not. But this is a boat, right? You see this boat? This boat is still this boat. Where is Where is, do you think, the boat touching the water? Because we have a mirage, we know that we can divide the image in half. This is the fold line. This is the vanishing line. This is the very most intense point of your focus with this object, because the shoreline over here, you see this tree? The shoreline over here is higher in your visual space than, I'm sorry, the shoreline is not only farther away from this boat, but it's also a little bit higher in your visual space. So just like the entire boat is here, that you just can't see it to define it, to distinguish it, to understand even what shape this boat is. It could be a pontoon boat for all you know. It could be a rowboat for all you know. So this boat is on the water. But you can't see the water anymore. But that doesn't mean that, like science has interpreted, because they will tell you in an isolated shot, they'll say, look, just take our word for it that this is a boat. But look how, you see how it's floating above the water? We know that can't happen in reality. So then they give you an explanation that can't happen in reality. Their explanation of what that line is the edge of the earth. And that boat is beyond it, but you can't see it, but the refraction is bringing it up. It's partly true, but grossly and disinformed.
Ay.
So now this boat is going farther and farther away from us. Or the event is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It could be either. But you see how the boat's now becoming extinguished? Look, the bird just disappeared. Right? Look, again. Watch this. Bill. This bird is going to land on the water. I don't understand how the bird can't remain above this refraction or above this reflection if the reflection is on the surface, like right here. If the reflection is on the surface, how is it that this bird is disappearing below a surface upon which it can't penetrate unless it forces itself under the water? Did it just go underwater right then? Because that bird is in front of this boat, which means there's more distance between them, which means the bird went underwater. Like, I don't get it, man. The shoreline is directly beyond that boat. It's crazy how that bird has stayed there in that orientation right in front of the house. That's the same bird, I would think. So look, right? What is this back here? It's the shoreline. How do you know that? Well, oops.
Yeah.
I'm doing ay this way, right? Watch this. Watch the position of this boat in relationship to the position of the Red Roof Pavilion. You see where this boat is going? It's going straight through right here. Is the water inundating the pavilion? Is it underwater? Look, it's going right. Look at that. Look how level those two things are. That's the orientation of the. It's like, where's the shoreline? Where would the shoreline be? You see how high up the boat is? And then the shoreline is directly beyond it. You see this angle of incidence? Watch. Right? So here is the angle from this bird to the boat. And then from the boat to the shoreline, look how, see how short that is? That's how much compressed distance is put into that amount of space within this mirage. And then, so now this is directly below the house. And now this is now like right where the shoreline is. Did this just, you know, like, is the water, you have to say, don't you? Or otherwise explain it to me. How is that not physical water inundating the land and swallowing it up in a flood? Deluge.
Yeah, look at this.
So now we have 3 boats. Boom, boom, boom. Bread and butter. Jinx. Do you not see how this boat is farther away along the same plane? Pyong, pyong, pyong. Here's the horizon. Here's the shoreline. And then this is lower, this is higher, this is in the visual space. In the visual space. When this boat gets far enough away like this one is, it'll look like this. I don't know if I'm ever going to get back to that barge. Do I need to? Alright, so... let's see if I can find another one.
And away we go.
So I wonder if I should just take a break and I'll start up another stream. I think I'm going to do that.